Many composers' music reflects their ancestral homelands. Joaquín Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez, the most popular concerto ever composed for guitar and orchestra, is inspired by the royal gardens at Aranjuez in Spain and features spellbinding Spanish guitarist Pablo Sáinz Villegas as soloist. Sibelius' Symphony No. 5 begins with the breadth and majesty of a Nordic landscape and ends with one of the most dramatic finales in classical music. Guest conductor Ankush Bahl leads the Phoenix Symphony in Armenian-American composer Alan Hovhaness' popular and meditative Symphony No. 2, Mysterious Mountain. As an only child growing up in New England, Alan Hovhaness found solace exploring the hilly landscapes around him, planting the seed of his approach to music and life that celebrated the metaphysical and spiritual dimensions of the natural world. He took piano lessons starting at 7, but his parents disapproved of his experiments with composition, and so he had to compose in the bathroom and hide the manuscripts under the bathtub, he later recounted. His first formal training as a composer didn't come until he enrolled at the New England Conservatory in Boston. It also brought him into contact with local musicians who were at the vanguard of transplanting Indian classical music to the United States, introducing a global perspective that remained a constant in Hovhaness' musical language. In the 1940s, Hovhaness reconnected with the church music of his father's homeland, Armenia, cementing the sense of religion and ritual even in his instrumental compositions. He also gained an influential champion in the conductor Leopold Stokowski of Fantasia fame, who used his radio and later television appearances to help promote new music he found worthy. Stokowski conducted the U.S. premiere of Hovhaness' Symphony No. 1, and he commissioned another large orchestral work for his debut concert with the Houston Symphony in 1955, an event that was broadcast live on NBC. Stokowski asked Hovhaness to give the piece a descriptive title, so after it was composed, he put the label of Mysterious Mountain on the 3-movement work. Hovhaness wrote in a program note, "Mountains are symbols, like pyramids, a man's attempt to know God. Mountains are symbolic, meeting places between the mundane and the spiritual world." Joaquín Rodrigo, blind from age 3, first took up music in Valencia near his birthplace on the eastern coast of Spain. After studying and working in France and Germany, he settled in Madrid in 1939, where he became famous for writing music that resonated with Spain's rich musical history, including its role as the birthplace of the guitar that descended from the Middle Eastern and Northern African lutes imported by the longtime Moorish occupiers. Rodrigo's most famous work is still the first concerto he wrote not long after arriving in Madrid, inspired by the nearby palace and gardens of Aranjuez, a royal property built up as a hunting lodge in the 1500s and rebuilt on a grand scale in the 1700s to rival Versailles in France. The Concierto de Aranjuez for guitar and chamber orchestra became a staple of concert programming, and it crossed over into pop culture through numerous recordings and adaptations, including the 1960 album Sketches of Spain by trumpeter Miles Davis. In 1915, Finland celebrated the 50th birthday of Jean Sibelius as a national holiday, honoring the composer who had been a popular hero since he introduced his saber-rattling first and second symphonies and the patriotic tone poem Finlandia around the turn of the 20th century. In the intervening years, Sibelius had abandoned city life in Helsinki and the heavy drinking and reckless spending that went along with it. He secluded himself at a rural retreat he named Ainola, after his wife Aino, relishing in the snow-covered peace. He became more isolated in his musical approach as well, diverging from the classical traditions of his early symphonies while also falling out of step with Schoenberg, Stravinsky, and other arch-modernists of the time. The Fifth Symphony initiated a new phase of crystallization in Sibelius's music, a trend he continued over the next dozen years in the closely related Sixth and Seventh Symphonies and the tone poem Tapiola. After that, the silence of Ainola enveloped Sibelius entirely, He lived there for another 30 years without completing a major composition. While Sibelius was drafting the Fifth Symphony at Ainola, he was astonished one morning by the sight of 16 swans in flight. "One of the greatest experiences of my life. God, how beautiful," he wrote in his diary. He sketched a theme that became the crux of the symphony, rendering the swans a noble swoops from the horns.